2 Corinthians 13. This is the third time I am coming to you. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established. I told you before, and foretell you, as if I were present the second time, and being absent now, I write to them which heretofore have sinned, and to all other that, if I come again, I will not spare. Since ye seek a proof of Christ speaking in me, which to you word is not weak, but is mighty in you. For though he was crucified through weakness, yet he liveth by the power of God. For we also are weak in him, but we shall live with him by the power of God toward you. Examine yourselves, whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves how that Jesus Christ is in you, except ye be reprobates? But I trust that he shall know that we are not reprobates. Now I pray to God that ye do no evil, not that we should appear approved, but that ye should do that which is honest, though we be as reprobates. For we can do nothing against the truth, but for the truth. For we are glad when we are weak, and ye are strong, and this also we wish, even your perfection. Therefore I write these things being absent, lest being present I should use sharpness according to the power which the Lord hath given me to edification, and not to destruction. Finally, brethren, farewell, be perfect, be of good comfort, be of one mind. Live in peace, and the God of love and peace shall be with you. Greet one another with an holy kiss. All the saints salute you. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Ghost be with you all. Amen.
Amen. Good evening. It is Monday, September the 8th, 2014. This is your host, Mike Callahan, and welcome to the Watchman News. I apologize for my absence last Friday. I had an issue come up with my ears. They were starting to, it wasn't so much my ears were bothering me, but my eustachian tubes were rather tender. And I was concerned with I use headphones when I do the show. And I was a little bit concerned that the headphones would cause me a further issue. I didn't want to irritate the situation and possibly be down for longer than that. So I apologize for not doing the show Monday. or Friday, I'm sorry. And I urge people, because a lot of people that watch on YouTube probably didn't know why I didn't do the show or anything. I urge everybody, go and join the Facebook page. I did update it on the Facebook page about an hour or so, I guess, before the show. I was trying to hold out as long as I could to see if I could get it to calm down, and which unfortunately I couldn't. I was using a heating pad and doing a few other things, just trying to get it to settle down a little bit, which was unsuccessful. But over the weekend, I was indeed able to get it to settle down, and I'm better now, and I'm here. So, we got some news for you tonight. We got 2 videos from suspicious observers. One of them is today's update, and the other one is about global warming, more or less. And so I got two videos of his to show you and some other news to cover. Watched an awesome movie today, Olympus Has Fallen. I thought that was a pretty good movie. I'm not necessarily promoting it, but it was a pretty good movie. It was it definitely kept me on my seat. It's real similar to White House Down, I believe is the name of it. And my girlfriend had told me about Olympus Has Fallen, so I watched it. And it was an awesome movie. I really enjoyed it, so I appreciate her telling me about it. So the Bible verse, that was 2 Corinthians chapter 13, and there was a lot of truth about truth in that chapter, and I urge you to read that chapter, listen to it again or whatnot. There's a lot to be said in that one chapter. And now I pray to God that ye do no evil, not that we should appear approved, but that ye should do which is honest, though we be as reprobates. It's important. It's important to do what's right. And in society these days, it makes it for a hard life in so many ways. I mean, you have society that tend to look down on people that do things the right way. You know how people take somebody that tries to not have idols, tries not to get involved in all these TV shows, sports, entertainment of different forms. Society kind of looks oddly upon people that are like that. And then you've got financial situations to where you try to be honest, you try to do the right. All right, I do believe I'm back. I apologize. I don't know what happened there. It showed up that my connection was lost temporarily. But anyway, I don't know what happened there. Let me go ahead and get going with the with Suspicious Observers videos for today, and I'll look into that while that's running. So without further ado, Suspicious Observers.
Well, good morning, folks. It is about 9 a.m. Eastern Time, which is about 2.5 to 3 hours later than the news normally comes out. We've had a significant amount of computer trouble this morning, but we are past that now. Everything is back up and running and all good. And since we are mostly quiet here on the world, figured it would be a pretty good time to, just show you guys how the news is done. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to share my screen here. And you have to excuse me, I don't know where that music is coming from. There we go. All right, so we're going to start here at the U.S., at the world wind map, excuse me. First thing I want you to notice is this is post-tropical Norbert right here. No longer a hurricane, in the middle of weakening. And what you're seeing here is the precipitable water overlay. These colors mean dry, and I'll click the Earth button in the bottom left so I can pull up the actual scale here, you can see on the scale that these yellows or tan colors are drier, and the closer you get to light blue, sky blue, and white is the more water there is. I'm going to leave this on while we look at the world wind map here. This area right here over the U.S. Southwest and over Mexico is the shear that's coming off of Norbert. That is one of the things that is causing this flash flood warning right here, which they're calling, for some reason, monsoon season. It's directly tied to the tropical storms that are there. We also have a flash flood warning over on the East Coast, and that is due to a little low, which you can see sucking in counterclockwise there at the coastline, but you also see this heavy flow of heat and moisture directly north up into Canada. Well, that is because we have another low up here as well, and even though this is not on the official watch list, where this heat and moisture is flowing, perhaps a little bit east of that as we get later into the day, there should be another storm watch up here as well. That is not on, listed as one of the major storm watches. They say there could be rain and some thunderstorms, but I think it might be a little more of one of those yellow watches we're used to seeing here. Interesting, we see the word snow right there. I know some areas of Alberta have already seen snow. Looks like it's coming again for some parts of Alberta and British Columbia. I'm going to go back to the U.S. wind, or the world wind map here and pull up Europe. And for those who don't know how to use the world wind map, click on my name anywhere on this page. That'll bring up our channel page, and then go scroll down, and under valuable information, you'll find a video on how to use this. Anyway, this is the low out here in the Atlantic that we've been focused on for a few days, and it actually looks like it's a bit further away from the coast now. The main low that we're going to be worried about right now is up here by Norway, drawing a lot of moisture in. It's how we get the main rain forecast to be up here. Now, I'm going to switch to the thunderstorm forecast. You can see that these are mostly due to, just some heat coming off of the Mediterranean. Looking down, these are very, very low warnings, no major warnings for Europe today. We're going to shift over to Australia and New Zealand. Note the high pressure right here, pretty much keeping New Zealand dry today. And we have flows, coming onto Australia from both directions. And this is why that we see a lot of moisture going to come up and just drop right after they've come up onto land. Really, it is pretty much that simple in terms of doing the weather. Let's kick it to space weather for a moment, because frankly, it's all quiet here as well. In fact, the closest thing we have to a story is the fact that the solar wind speed did take another little jump up. I actually think that may have been part of a coronal hole stream rather than part of that weak interplanetary shock from days ago, but nonetheless, KP index is low and we have absolutely no geomagnetic instability. GOES X-ray flux shows that we failed to get back up into M range. We were just kind of sputtering with some smaller C flares. And just as importantly, here on the SOHO LASCO C3 coronagraph, you can see that there are no large flares or CMEs, even on the backside of our star. Last but not least, folks, let's check and see what the potential is for more flaring. And finally, we have a day where SDO is a bit clearer. If you compare this to yesterday's news, you'll see that yesterday's images were very degraded on SDO. Here we can see that we've got positive, negative, but they're not as connected as we want. Their penumbras do appear to be touching. You can call that delta if you want, but there's too much area in between the positive and negative for them to really mix very well. Now we're going to come down and take a look at this large area on the south. Now, this is where I made an error yesterday, and I'm not sure if this is if it actually was an error or if this has rebuilt from yesterday. But I said that this Delta class sunspot had kind of decayed, And it looks like that's not the case today. It looks like we have a strong mix of positive and negative right there. Maybe we just weren't able to see it on yesterday's more degraded and more grainy images, but it looks like indeed this Delta class sunspot is surviving, even though it's not really popping major flares. There's the last couple hours of the star, very, very calm, not even really any coronal holes facing Earth. If anybody wants to come and make their own movies on ISWA, I've showed you guys how to do that on SDO a number of times. But just come to the integrated space weather application. There'll be a link for this below. And under the solar tab, just come to 4 or 5 or 6, and you'll find all these wonderful sun images that we use all the time. If you don't feel like waiting for HelioViewer, this can be a lot quicker, and it's as simple as clicking the button down there to start a movie. I tend to want to make a bigger movie, so I'll look at 100 frames, 10 frames per second, click apply, and right now ISWA is building a movie of the last 100 images of the SDO AIA 193. Then it's as simple as you can see the little progress bar. This really doesn't take that long. It's already up into the 70s. We'll zoom in a bit here. And as you can see, the movie has started. It really is that simple. Apologies for taking so long to get the news out today, folks, but had some computer trouble that we are now past, and really do appreciate the patience. Calm day, though. Luckily, nothing major is happening. I will catch you guys a little bit later in the afternoon. Be safe, everyone.
And thanks to Suspicious Observers, he's got another video. Both video links are down in the About tab. That was nice for him to, show how to view some of the same things that he shows us every single day. I've been watching him for quite some time. I check up on that stuff myself sometimes, but I let him do the reports because he knows a lot more what he's doing and looking at than what I do. So let's go ahead and get on with the second video of his so I can start doing the news after that. And he did a video today called The Global Warming Pause. So I figured we would include that in today's news.
This is a video about the well-known global warming pause. Before we begin, my name is Ben Davidson and I'm the director of the Mobile Observatory Project. We have multiple ongoing research lines in space weather, geology, plasma physics, and electrical phenomenon. We also do a daily update on all things space weather related and are on tour across the land having meet and greets, lectures, and other special events. Now, despite the global warming pause and the information here, this speaker does not advocate deregulation. Pollution is poison. The climate is changing. And we need to know what the scientists know, but which our media won't seem to tell us. Meet the head of the International Panel on Climate Change. And while guarded in the implication of his words, he and every other scientist on Earth now concedes global temperatures have not gone up for nearly 2 decades. Even before these revelations, the record of lead authors and contributors quitting in protest of the IPCC was already loaded. Here, we see the temperature variation according to NASA in red and the European data in green. It shows the plateau of late and what is actually a slight, tiny little cooling trend for more than a decade now. As CO2 has risen exponentially, the questions keep coming, which is one of the reasons we made the climate change series. Advocates of human-caused global warming are calling the pause an anomaly and call anyone who questions their failing mathematical models a denier. Those opposed to the global warming position appear to be advocating on economic greed rather than pursuit for scientific truth, and worse yet, they mostly claim there is no climate problem. This series takes neither of those positions. Part of our regular updates checks in on temperature records for the United States and the world. Updated by the day from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and recently, the website What's Up With That published a review of this material for 2014 thus far. The compilations appear to show a continued trend of increasing cold events, far outpacing heat. The science says one thing, the media says another. In our speech at EU 2014, we began by discussing the 97% consensus on climate change, suggesting that the work appeared to only claim that humans had some effect on climate change, something with which even most skeptics do not agree. Recently, the Global Warming Policy Foundation did a more thorough examination of the consensus and came to precisely the same conclusion. If you ask me, that number should be 100%. Every input into a system has an effect on the outcome, and for any scientist to deny this is baffling. But given that the models have failed for almost 2 decades and have focused on pollution and deforestation as the main cause, perhaps we should look for the part of the story that we're missing. Let's clear up some things. First, Arctic sea ice is technically below the long-term average during our time of observation, but we have seen a tremendous rebound of late. The current ice extent is not only above the record lows, it is above many of the ice extents measured during the satellite age. Science says one thing, the media says another. The Antarctic sea ice is an even more surprising story. The record high southern ice marks were shattered all throughout 2013, and so far in 2014, we have either matched those records or set new ones. The science says one thing, the media says another, like that there is runaway melting in the Antarctic. However, if you pay attention, that applies only to the western sheet. And as we begin discovering the enormous volcanoes directly beneath the heat, the media has finally acknowledged that the lone piece that was melting down south has nothing to do with global warming. We've recently seen indisputable proof that NASA and NOAA have changed their data, fiddled with it to show warming trends that were actually not there. And recently, we learned that the Australian government did the exact same thing. Joanne Nova is one of the best bloggers on the climate change topic, and her expose of the manipulation and excuses is outstanding. A cooling trend magically becomes a warming trend, and the only possible avenue of explanation from the government is classified. When ClimateGate occurred, those leaked emails discussing how they would manipulate the climate data to propel the global warming story, I was certain that people would wake up. But an enormous spin campaign and some academically laughable excuses flooded the internet and the airwaves. When it was revealed that Al Gore stood to make a ridiculous fortune on his proposed carbon swaps, I was sure people would see the conflict of interest, but I was wrong. So when the second round of leaked emails showed a far deeper and more troubling story to the ClimateGate issue, I was no longer surprised to find a lack of caring. Guys, I hate pollution just like you, but lying to ourselves and each other is just not the way to go about making a better world. We don't need excuses to make a better planet, we should just want to do it. And our use of the climate story might end up disastrous. In addition to one side trying to say there is not a problem, the advocates of climate science have astonishingly not made a single attempt to integrate cold into their story. Instead, they try to explain away the pause, but a lack of coordination among them has caused timeline after timeline to be pushed back, now all the way to 2025. So now they don't have to explain their failure for at least another 10 years. How convenient. The worst part is that now more than a dozen climate excuses purporting to explain the pause are lacking any interest in the sun. The IPCC in modern climate science claims we can only look at ultraviolet energy from our star, which makes the sun look insignificant with only a 0.1% variation to the 11-year solar sunspot cycle. However, the extreme ultraviolet energy can vary by a factor of 10, and the individual maximum activity points of the sunspot cycle can have phenomenal variability. Space weather, how the Sun-Earth connections work, are the primary focus of the climate change series. We've now seen dozens of studies in just the last few years proving the solar effect on sudden stratospheric warmings, on jet stream blocking, on quasi-biennial oscillation, on polar vortex patterns, lightning modulation, tropospheric temperatures, and even wind speed. And they keep coming. On a global, regional, and local level, we can add atmospheric pressure and the gradients between high and low to that list of solar-affected weather. We've also provided a link to an excellent expose on how the sun drives the climate along with a PDF from the CIA that goes back to the 70s, showing how long the government has known that the warming would end in favor of colder climates, similar to what happened hundreds of years ago when famine and drought accompanied the worst period of the last mini ice age. If you can bring yourself to look back past 1880, the time the IPCC says climate science begins, back that far to the last mini ice age, the connection with the sun is so clear that a child can understand it. And they do. At this point, there are literally hundreds of students who have commented on the stark connection between the sun and the climate if you're willing to look back to the last mini ice age. The space weather effect described in the climate change series is this. The grand solar cycle is resetting now. The lack of warming may last a lot longer than till 2025, and it may be such that we do see another mini ice age. The current interglacial period has gone on for quite some time now. Just because the climate isn't warming anymore doesn't mean climate change isn't a problem. And just because human imperfection reared its ugly head the last 2 decades is no reason to keep poisoning the planet. So ask yourself, are you an advocate or are you an observer?
Thanks again to Ben Davison for bringing a little bit of truth to what's going on with the quote-unquote, well, now they actually call it climate change, but he's got total truth with what he's saying. If you go back, you check the records yourself, you'll see that he's telling the truth. Absolutely telling the truth. So let's get on with the news. The first article I have for you. Unidentified respiratory virus likely to hit kids across the country. A respiratory illness has already sickened more than 1,000 children in 10 states. Is likely to become a nationwide problem, doctors say. The disease hasn't been officially. I was waiting for that video to pop up.
Kids across the country.
Let's see. The disease hasn't been officially identified, but officials suspect a rare respiratory virus called the human enterovirus. I probably pronounced that wrong. 68. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the virus is related to the rhinovirus, which caused. According to Mark, Director of the Division of Viral Diseases at the CDC, similar cases to the ones in Colorado have been cropping up across the U.S. at least 10 states. Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, Kentucky, Iowa, Colorado, Ohio, Oklahoma, North Carolina, and Georgia have reported suspected outbreaks of human enterovirus 68 and requested CDC support. Viruses don't tend to respect borders, ABC News Chief Health and Medical Editor Dr. Richard Besser said. It is only 10 states now, but it is going to be across the country. So if your state doesn't have it now, watch for it. It's coming. Doctors say that they are not even sure how this particular virus spreads, though the back-to-school season is a normal time for illness to spread among children. This is a very common time for outbreaks. Kids come back to school, they like to share things, they bring them home to their little brothers and sisters, and enteroviruses tend to occur in the summer, Besser said. But this particular enterovirus 68, is very rare, and they have no idea why it showed up this year. At Children's Hospital Colorado in Denver, officials say that between August 18th and September 4th, doctors saw more than 900 pediatric patients with symptoms of the respiratory virus in the emergency room. Of those who came in, 86 were admitted into the hospital and a handful ended up in intensive care unit. It can start just like a cold, runny nose, sneezing, coughs, but it's the wheezing you have to watch out for, Besser said. Dr. Christine Nyquist, a pediatrician at Children's Hospital Colorado, said the virus usually ends up appearing similar to a severe cold, but it can be particularly dangerous for children with asthma because of how it affects the respiratory system. The kids are coming in with respiratory problems. Their asthma is exacerbated, Nyquist said. Kids with no wheezing are having wheezing. At Rocky Mountain Hospital for Children, Dr. Rahul Miapan, a pediatric critical care physician, said he's seen multiple children end up in the pediatric intensive care unit after being infected with the virus, and that children under the age of 5 or those with asthma appear to be at most risk. In one particular severe case, Myopin said a 13-year-old asthmatic patient ended up in an emergency room just one day after showing basic cold-like symptoms, including cough and runny nose. His asthma became so severe on the second day, the teenager turned blue and was rushed to the emergency room where doctors gave him emergency breathing tube. The patient was one of the multiple asthmatic pediatric patients who ended up sedated in the intensive care unit with a breathing tube, Myopin said. Patients who need breathing tubes spent between 4 to 7 days sedated and intubated as they recovered, he said. Look, you know, we can all we can run with conspiracy theories and everything else on things like this. I really don't know, you know, to be onto it or anything else to see if anything looks suspicious, but it seems like it's getting worse and worse and worse with these illnesses as the years go by. And I don't think it's because people are paying more attention or anything. I think it's actually getting worse. And I don't know if it's just a result of nature. I don't know if it's a result of mutation of these viruses, or if you know, certain people are playing with their toys, so to speak. But I think this is probably just a thing of nature here. But if you have children, keep an eye on them. You know, take care of it right away. If you see those symptoms, you know, the runny nose, sneezing, coughs, especially wheezing, get it dealt with immediately, because this is serious. And the last thing we want to do is see children lose their lives over a respiratory virus. So I thought I would report that. Now it could be the end of the world news, I suppose. Stephen Hawking says Higgs boson has potential to destroy entire universe. And this is another one that's going to want to pop up. Scientist Stephen Hawking has warned that the Higgs boson, the so-called God particle, could cause space and time to collapse. But there is time for lunch. It may take trillions of years to topple. The British professor said that the very high energy levels, the Higgs boson, the subatomic particle which gives us our shape and size, could become so unstable that it would cause space and time to collapse. Hawking made his comments in the preface to a new book, Starmus. The Higgs boson field is the force within the universe which gives particles mass and therefore acts as the glue which holds everything together. Without that glue, we'd all disintegrate at the speed of light. Now Hawking's comments that the Higgs was a worrisome feature that it might become metastable at very high energies, which reignited unfounded fears that the black hole could be created on Earth. Hawking went on, this could mean the universe could undergo catastrophic vacuum decay with a bubble of the true vacuum expanding at the speed of light. This could happen at any time and we wouldn't see it coming. His words have rattled the physics community, not because he's specifically wrong, but because of the public fears his comments, without context, could cause. After all, before CERN was even powered up, the fear it could cause us all to collapse into a black hole was a widespread internet concern. CERN, by the way, is a huge, they call it a particle collider. And what's the proper words here? It accelerates particles at such high rates of speed, and it smashes them together, and then it's got these very high-tech cameras that will take a picture right at the very moment that those particles hit each other. It's pretty interesting science. Hawking does admit, however, that the likelihood of a disaster involving the Higgs is very small, since physicists do not have a particle accelerator large enough to create such an experiment. Australian physicist Dr. Alan Duffy takes the argument one step further. Such a catastrophic transition to a new state by a Higgs field collapse could not be caused by colliders anyway, in the same way that volcanologists who measure the tremors of a volcano aren't responsible for any eruption. Any particle accelerator that reaches 1,000 BNGeV would be larger than the Earth and is unlikely to be funded in the present economic climate, Hawking wrote. But bigger ones are on the cards. Dr. Duffy of Swinburne University of Melbourne says Hawking is technically correct, but adds the energy levels necessary to push the Higgs boson beyond its tipping point would have to be astronomical. In fact, an accelerator capable of propelling particles up to the necessary speeds for such a catastrophe would likely have to be on the scale similar to that of our solar system. Those being built now are on a much more practical scale. These facilities will help us learn more about the Higgs and the stability of our universe with no prospect of ending it. Sorry, Hollywood, you'll have to get a new disaster film plot. Dr. Duffy says that what we know about the mass of the Higgs particle puts it in a region in which the Higgs field could be unstable, technically described as metastable. As we learn more about the Higgs field may end up being completely stable after all. It's really only at the cusp of being unstable in any case, he says. The current understanding puts the Higgs field in a position, I guess it's not analogs, I don't believe, that of a rock rolling down a valley. It may get lodged in a crevice high up in the valley floor, Dr. Duffy says. We think that the Higgs field could be at this point, and something might nudge it to fall down to the true floor, the lowest energy state. The point at which this happens will change into a new universe, called a phase transition. This would look like a fireball spreading out at the speed of light, converting the old universe into a new one. Dr. Duffy says the chances of this happening are incredibly tiny. But wait long enough, trillions of years, and the odds keep shortening, he said. Nevertheless, our sun will have long since run out of fuel, swollen up as a red giant and destroyed the Earth, and that's in about 5 billion years' time. I doubt we'll ever have to worry about the Higgs getting us first. In any case, the good news is that we'd never see it coming. It's traveling at the speed of light. So there's no point in worrying. Something, though, that we need to keep mindful of and understand that, there's a lot of things, I'm sure, when it comes to experiments like this that are being withheld because they wouldn't, they don't want to cause mass panic or anything like that. I had a little concern when they had built CERN, and it was probably the internet worry that they were referring to. Again, I think it's a little more dangerous than what he's putting off that it is right now. But I think a lot of it depends on what kind of particles they're going to try and accelerate and everything else. I don't see... it would be kind of pointless for them to destroy the entire planet. They just want 90% of us gone, not the whole Earth. So, just interesting science. I thought I would share that article. And not to be confused with the predictions made by the particular Puerto Rican clergyman, but meteorite smashes into Nicaragua. A mysterious explosion in the rock Nicaragua's crowded capital, Managua, I hope I pronounced this stuff right, creating a large crater appears to have been caused by a meteorite. Amazingly, in a sprawling city of 1.2 million people, the impact near the international airport did not cause any known injuries, but it did leave a crater measuring 12 meters. We are convinced that this was a meteorite. We have seen the crater from the impact, said Wilfredo Strauss of the Seismic Institute. The meteorite appeared to have hurtled into a wooded area near the airport around midnight on Saturday. Its thunderous impact felt across the capital. The hit was so large that it registered on the instruments Strauss's organization uses to size up earthquakes. You can see two waves. First, a small seismic wave, and then the meteorite hit Earth. And then another stronger one, which is the impact of the sound, he said. Government officials and experts visited the impact site on Sunday. One of them, William Martinez, said it was not yet clear if the meteorite burned up completely or it had been blasted into the soil. You can see mirror-like spots on the sides of the crater from where the meteorite power-scraped the walls, Martinez said. Government spokeswoman First Lady Rosario Murillo said Managua would be in contact with the U.S. Geological Service to try to get more information about this fascinating event. In the Central American nation, one of the Latin America's poorest countries. People who lived near the crater told local media they heard a blast that they took for an explosion, and that liquid, sand, and dust were blowing through the air, which smelled like something had burned. There were no reported injuries because the impact was in the wooded spot, and flights at the airport were not affected. So, it's kind of a reminder that at any time, any day, you know, we could have something like this happen. And unfortunately, it's extremely hard for these to be tracked. So yes, most definitely, the Earth could get struck by something without us even seeing it coming, or at least purportedly. I don't know. It's hard to believe with all our technology that we can't detect these things ahead of time. And even if we could, our governments wouldn't let us know. I can assure you of that. So I had some news for you for Friday, and I didn't do it because I didn't do the show due to my eustachian tubes. So I'm going to go ahead and run through those stories, and we will be done for the evening. The last one is a Whiskey Tango Foxtrot of the month story. But anyway, the headline here. Chartered commercial jet carrying Americans makes unplanned landing in Iran. A military chartered aircraft carrying about 100 Americans from Afghanistan to Dubai landed unexpectedly in Iran on Friday after Iranian officials questioned its flight plan and ordered it down. U.S. and regional officials said. Officials said the pilots landed of their own accord in the city of Bandar Abbas after being warned that the plane would be intercepted if they did not land. One U.S. official familiar with the initial report about the incident said Iranian fighter jets were scrambled, but the State Department later denied any Iranian military involvement. In a statement, the department described the incident as a bureaucratic issue. In a later statement Friday night, State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf said the issue had been resolved and the plane has departed Iran and landed in Dubai. The operator of the aircraft, Fly Dubai, is based in the United Arab Emirates. An official from the region who spoke on condition of anonymity because of the reluctance to become involved in a U.S.-Iran issue said the confusion occurred when the plane, chartered by the U.S.-led International Military Command in Afghanistan, left Bagram Air Base north of Kabul several hours after its scheduled departure time. When it entered Iranian airspace, the official said, air traffic controllers, there had no updated flight plan reflecting its presence. And a U.S. official said that the Iranians ordered the plane back to Afghanistan, but when the pilot replied they did not have enough fuel for the return trip, the Iranians subsequently ordered the plane to land, this official said. The Iranian government said no initial comment on the incident. Fly Dubai aircraft regularly fly in the Iranian airspace. The company operates commercial flights between Iran and various points in the region. Bandar Abbas, a city on the strategic Strait of Hormuz, is the location of Iran's main naval base, and its civilian airport is also used by the Iranian Air Force. In 1988, as U.S. warships patrolled the Persian Gulf during the Iran-Iraq War, a missile mistakenly fired from the USS Vincennes shot down an Iranian commercial airliner that had taken off in Bandar Abbas, killing all 290 people aboard. That plane also was en route to Dubai, about a 30-minute flight away. In a settlement reached 8 years later, the United States agreed to pay $61.8 million in compensation to the families of the dead. Pretty sad, huh? All the money that we spend, the billions and the trillions with a T, disgusting. And I know there was quotes that were made back then about how our government would not apologize and all that for what had happened, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It really is. But yeah, I mean, little bitty issues like that, and who knows if there's anything else involved or anything else. We just never know anymore. We just kind of have to take the news as we get it, and for the most part figure it out ourselves if we can. Sometimes we can't even do that. So there's another story. This tells you about how they're treating a youth. 3 cops tackle a 100-pound high school girl for using a cell phone. Students react with protest. There's a video I'll play real quick.
Our hearing from a Houston area sophomore who says that she was arrested on her high school campus for just looking at her cell phone. A protest took place at the school today, and as Local 2's Ryan Korsgaard reports, the arrest was caught on camera.
We're told that all of this started with a phone call during class hours from one student. 3 HISD officers tried to take her into custody, and now there's a protest.
Free Sam Houston!
This gathering demanding justice started with this video shared on Instagram with the hashtag #FreeSamHouston. 10th grader Ixo Perez says that this is what happened after she checked her phone while in class at Sam Houston Math, Science, and Technology Center. She says 3 HISD officers wrestled her to the floor.
Yeah, it was way too much. Everybody knows that. I mean, I'm only 14 and 6, plus 3 cops to just over a phone just because I didn't want to give up my phone.
She said she knows that she broke the rule against using her phone in class. She said she did it because the text was from her dad checking on her mother who has kidney problems.
She was worried about me and she didn't want to let the phone go, you know, because she was scared.
At that point, the call ends. Ixo is in custody and facing suspension until Friday. HISD says it's aware of the situation and is investigating. The district said, the safety of our students at Sam Houston High School is our absolute top priority. The HISD Police Department and the school's administration are continuing their investigations of what led to the detainment of a female student yesterday. Protesters out front say this is not acceptable. They want change. They don't understand why it took 3 officers to arrest a teenager who stands 4'10" and weighs about 100 pounds. While the protests out here continue, HISD again says it is investigating. In Northeast Houston, Ryan Korsgaard, KPRC, Local 2.
Ixo's mom says that she wants to move her daughter to another school after her suspension ends on Friday.
I want to point out a couple of things with that. You know, number one, the excessive use of force and the intimidation tactics that are being used these days are absolutely ridiculous. This whole no tolerance thing is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I wasn't there. I mean, she could have smarted off to the officers or whatever the case. I wasn't there. But it didn't deem 3 officers to take her down. I can tell you that. No matter what it was, it did not deem that. It just didn't. And the second thing I wanted to point out, and this is extremely bothersome to me, and this just shows to me how complacent our society is, but it showed some video of the children out there protesting what had gone on, but I didn't see no parents. Where are the parents? That's disgusting. That's disgusting. I mean, it's just my opinion, but these officers should be afraid to have their faces shown or their names known or anything else. I mean, and I'm not saying that in a threatening way. I'm just saying we've got to put a stop to this. We've got to. It's got to stop. They are public servants, not masters. It's crazy. It's crazy. You know, I mean, and they can play things off like with what happened in Ferguson. They can play that off, and they've done it well, played it off as being a race issue. And I'm still seeing stuff about Ferguson, and it's typically always about race, and it's like that. You know, I'm not saying that's not a problem. I'm not saying that we need to shove the race discussion underneath the rug and not talk about it. I'm not saying that, but they're diverting us from the bigger issue here. You know, it's all of us. They're using these intimidation tactics and the show of force and this. You know, they're using the Stockholm syndrome on all of us. It doesn't matter what color we are, what religion we are, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And there's only one way it's going to stop, and that's when the people say, we've had enough. And I mean that. We've had enough. And not turn around and walk away the first time they say, well, if you don't listen to us, we're going to, you know. No. We've got to show them with more people than what they can muster that we're not going to be pushed any further. We're going to stand our ground, and that's all there is to it. It's the only way it's going to stop. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. That I promise you. It's going to get much worse before it gets better. We've just been too complacent for too long. We've let them get away with too much. You know. They're going to test the people, and unfortunately, just like any other situation that we've been in this country or any other country, whether it be with the labor force or anything else, you know, they're going to push it to extremes to see just how much the people will put up with and when they will back down. So we'll get on to the next story. Links for all these are down in the About tab as usual. Presenting the most pitifully capitalized central bank in the West. Hint, it's not the Fed. Thought it was, with everything going on in the economy, I thought it was kind of interesting to do this story. As the world's top central bankers gathered at their annual jamboree recently, the governor of Bank of Canada, Stephen Pullis, undoubtedly received envious comments from his fellow money magicians for Canada's perceived status as a global financial safe haven. The newly found perception was perhaps best exemplified during a Bloomberg of RBC Wealth Management. The biggest financial institution in Canada said that Canada is what Switzerland was 20 years ago, and the banks in Canada are what Swiss banks were 20 years ago. This is the new flavor of Kool-Aid. Canada is seen as a new banking safe haven and an island of safety and stability because of its perceived sound fiscal position, commodity wealth, and solid economic performance. Now, anytime I see central bankers slapping each other on the back, I'm going to be skeptical. But here at the Sovereign Man, our conclusions are all data-driven, so we dove into the numbers. First, the Big Daddy himself, Canada's central bank. A strong, healthy banking system requires a central bank with a pristine balance sheet, specifically substantial net equity as percentage of assets. So how strong is the balance sheet for Bank of Canada? Not very. As it turns out, Bank of Canada is actually the most pitifully capitalized central bank in the Western world. They're in such bad shape they actually make the Fed look healthy. Hong Kong's Monetary Authority Exchange Fund is a good example of a strong balance sheet. Their latest figures as of 30th of June is a whopping capital reserve equal near to 22% of total assets. This is a massive margin of safety for the central bank. The U.S. Federal Reserve, on the other hand, shows a capital reserve of just 1.27%, and Canada, a tiny 0.47%, as in less than 1/2 of 1%. This isn't safety and stability, it's a rounding error. Moreover, Canada has zero reserve requirements for its banks. This means that Canadian banks are not obliged to hold any of their customers' deposits. So yes, it's legally permissible for a Canadian bank to loan out 100% of its customers' funds. Not to worry though, the Canadian Deposit Insurance Corporation is standing by to insure bank deposits up to $100,000. But when you look at it closely, there isn't much there for depositors at all. There's roughly $646 billion of eligible deposits in the Canadian banking system, yet the CDIC only has $2.8 billion in cash available to insure it all, a ratio of just 0.43%. Even more troubling is that Canada has legislated an actual Cypher-style confiscation of the deposits in the event that Canadian banks deplete their capital. Buried deep into the government's Economic Action Plan 2013 is a provision that would implement a bail-in regime for systematically important banks. And by the way, the United States has done the same thing. This would legally allow the banks to tap into customer deposit if the banks get into trouble, something I don't find particularly safe. Last, the Canada myth really starts to become apparent when you look at the country's gold reserves. At the beginning of the century, Canada held 46.19 tons of gold. Now they hold only 2.99 tons. That's a whopping 93.5% decline in gold reserves in just over a decade. In other words, Canada's monetary leadership has made a conscious decision to reject real assets in favor of paper assets that can be conjured out of thin air. They've managed to run their central bank into borderline insolvency. It's important to look at facts and not rely on sentiment. To anyone who rationally looks at the data, the obvious conclusion is that Canada is certainly not the safe haven it's built up to be. So, and this has been going on in the U.S. and countries all over the world, and any countries that's not willing to give up their gold and take on the paper assets, they wind up in a war. I mean, it's as simple as that. You either join the global banking cartel, because it is a cartel, it's nothing but a huge mafia. You either join it, play their little paper game, or get bombed. That's pretty much the options that you have. It's disgusting. And it makes me wonder, why is it that this global banking cartel, how come they need all the gold? What's the point? I really don't understand it. I really think it goes further beyond than them just seeing it as power, because really, what's gold? Metal. It really is. We don't need gold for our daily lives for the most part. We just don't. We need food, we need water, we need shelter. We don't need gold. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. People give power to things that should not have power whatsoever. And it just astonishes me. It really does. It really astonishes me. So here's the Whiskey Tango. I think I can safely say that, although it's only the 8th. And this came, by the way, this came out on the 3rd. Charges: Minneapolis man ejaculated in co-worker's coffee. Hey, don't hold it against me. I'm just the messenger. I told you. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. A 34-year-old Blaine, Minnesota man is accused of ejaculating on his co-worker's desk and in her coffee. I'm sorry. Yeah, I could have refrained from bringing this news, but I didn't. John Orlean faces 2 counts of criminal sexual conduct for incidents that allegedly happened since late February. Charges were filed in Ramsey County. According to the criminal complaint, an employee at Biswinger's hardware store in New Brighton called police on August 26, saying she thought Lynn, her co-worker, was leaving bodily fluids on her desk. She told officers that she found Lynn that afternoon standing in front of her desk, his back turned to her and his hands near his crotch. The worker wasn't sure what Lynn was doing, but she told police she had a deer in the headlights, or that he had a deer in the headlights expression on his face when he noticed her behind him. Lynn then quickly left the room and slammed the door behind him, the worker said. Seconds later, Lynn came back, told the worker he had a question for her, but forget it. He then left the area. The worker told police she inspected her desk and found fluid on the surface, dripping on the floor, and a lot of it had been absorbed into her hair scrunchie, which she put into a plastic bag. When at the scene, officers collected her coffee mug, coffee, and scrunchie. The worker told police she had problems with Lynn's for months. He allegedly leave his zipper down often. It happened so much that the worker, she said, threatened to report Lynn if it happened again. On August 28, Lynn agreed to meet with the police at the New Brighton Public Safety Center. The complaint states, while talking with officers, he admitted to ejaculating on his co-worker's desk and coffee on August 26, which was his birthday. Happy birthday, man. He then went on to admit that he ejaculated in her coffee twice in the last 6 months, and on her desk 4 times, wiping up the mess with the scrunchie. He told police he was attracted to his co-worker, and he did this to get her to notice him. He also said that he knew it was gross and wrong, the complaint states. The worker told police that her coffee had tasted strange on numerous occasions, more than twice in the last several months. She said initially thought that the taste was spoiled cream, but when police informed her that Lynn admitted to tampering with her coffee, she said, "I knew it." Lynn told police he'd never done this to another woman. Sorry. He's summoned to be in court September 29. If he's convicted on both counts, Lynn could face a penalty of more than a year in prison or a $4,500 fine. Oh, that's the wrong way to go about asking a girl on a date. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Oh my goodness. What is wrong with society? Now this stuff I don't think is new. I think people have been this deranged for a long time. I really do. I don't think that this kind of craziness is that new. But it's still crazy. That's for sure. Wow. Wow, what's this world coming to? I figured save the best for last. That was the last story I have for you. I feel a little odd saying this, but may God bless you. May He walk with you. And I love you all, just not that much. Okay? Y'all be good. Keep things to yourselves and everything. You have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow night.